Keto and crime, keto and crime. We uncover the grime on keto and crime. Keto and crime, keto and crime. Now is the time for keto and crime.
Everyone, welcome to Keto and Crime. Today we have a special treat for you. One of the channels that I watch the most. I have Roberta from the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, and she's with us today as a very special guest. So welcome so much. Thank you so much for coming, and welcome, Roberta.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, I guess just for my subscribers that may not know who you are, and they're going to know you after today. Would you kind of tell us a little bit about your channel and how you got into true crime and where your interest lies?
Well, I did everything backwards, and I wouldn't advise starting a podcast the way I did. My sister-in-law told me to listen to Serial. She wasn't sure if Adnan Syed was guilty or not. And I did listen to the entire Serial podcast, and I was outraged that they were minimizing the victim and not really telling the whole story. And so I decided to make some kind of statement about it, and that's what started off. And then I had a few things more to say. And so what my podcast has been doing is really tracking the wrongful conviction movement, which I consider the biggest fraud in America going right now. So I'm probably more interested in these innocence campaigns that start out with a documentary. So there's two aspects. There's the entertainment aspect, where people are making money falsely portraying the cases as wrongfully conviction cases. And then there's also just the wrongful conviction movement, the Innocence Project, pushing through, kind of intimidating these DAs and trying to interfere with, they always come like 20 years later to a case, and they're really looking for these. In New York, we're paying out multi-million-dollar wrongful conviction payments to people who, I've looked at the record, I think are completely guilty. And I think that you would think that wouldn't be popular, but it goes on and on and on and on and on. Actually, in 2018, there was a lawyer in Queens who got actually amazingly tried for this, for trying to get witnesses to recant, and he was in it for the wrongful conviction money. I can send you the article about that. So there's been one lawyer stopped, but there's many lawyers in on this, and it's a big rift. And that's my interest. And I'm also interested in cults. I know you're interested in cults too. And that took me to actually going to the Epstein hearings, some Epstein related hearings, Ghislaine Maxwell's bail hearing. I'm hoping to go to her trial. And I went to all of the NXIVM hearings and much of the trial. So I followed that case from the beginning to the end in court. And I think that's what makes my channel. I don't know of another podcast that actually goes to court. I'm sure your listeners will remind me of one, but I don't see too many of them doing it.
I think you're absolutely correct. I don't listen to one that does go to court. Even the lawyers that I listen to, the attorneys that I listen to online, Rakita Law and Nate the Lawyer, I don't think they actually go to trials either. They comment on them, but I don't think they go actually to trial. So you are very unique in that.
Thank
for
you.
Sure. And I honestly did not realize until I got into the Paul Howell murder. I did not realize that the attempt to free guilty people as innocent was such a big movement. Um, it's just harrowing. You go down that rabbit hole and you don't realize, I didn't realize it was a scam. As an average viewer of these things, I always figured, overturning wrongful convictions was a good thing, but you realize, like you said, it has a dark side. And
Right.
I didn't, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. And there's so many magic tricks that they do. I just came to talk to you from talking to Julius Jones's attorney, David McKenzie. And we were talking about that case. You did a great video about the Jones case, and or Paul Howell's murderer. I hate to leave out the victim. And I was saying, well, what those Arizona lawyers did is they took a gamble, thinking it's been almost 2 decades later. Let's test the bandana that was found wrapped around the gun in Julius Jones's house on the crawl space above his room. And had that been sort of an impartial DNA or no DNA found on it, that would have been a huge win. I had a guest host who did a case in Georgia where this woman was tied up, and those ties had been passed around the jury, and because they didn't find any DNA, I think it was 20 or 25 years later, he's innocent all of a sudden. All of a sudden, that throws everything out, all the circumstantial. So say that would throw out Annalise Presley's statement, Kermit Lottie, Liddell King, everybody in the Jones case their testimony would mean nothing. Jordan's, everything, it would be nothing. It would all be the DNA, and they might have actually overturned the conviction, and that is really scary. And in Oklahoma, they're capped at $750,000 you can get for wrongful convictions, which the people of Oklahoma should be very thankful. So Julius Jones wouldn't get that much money for his quote unquote wrongful conviction, but it would still have been a possibility had the coin flipped the other way in that case.
Absolutely. What gets me about that case, DNA evidence aside, which was a slam dunk. I mean, I forget who said it, but I heard one podcaster say, it might have even been on your show, said that after the DNA came back it was pretty much verifiable. It was absolutely Mr. Jones, Julius's DNA. There would have to be like 6 times the African-American male population in the country that there was in 1999 to find anybody that matched it other than him.
It's 1 in 110 million match. Yeah,
absolutely. So there would have had to have been, and like, I think there was only, there was 30 million, 35 million African-Americans total, and like 17 million males. And that would have had to, one of them have access to his room. Come on. And somebody on your podcast, I believe it was your podcast, said that at that point, if that was them, they would have already slinked away in disgrace if they were the Arizona lawyers, but they just keep coming. And that's
right. And this is not the only case like this. I left a comment on your channel. There's the Kevin Cooper case that they gave, Tulsi Gabbard gave our vice president such hell for in his DNA. They tested something that wasn't even, they went after something that wasn't even in the prosecution's argument to test. So it's not even part. I mean, this is just such a miracle. And Kevin Cooper's DNA came back with it, and they're still pushing his innocence. Rodney Reed's a little different because now they have a different backstory to that, which was his backstory to every woman he ever raped, which was that they were having a secret affair. But the idea of the Innocence Project, I think it attracts people because we think of DNA as so certain. It's such a certain thing. Well, if it is there, then it is, and it's not. But it's really a much more nuanced thing. And they're not getting that. They just push on. When the DNA comes back with their client's DNA on it, they keep pushing innocence. And they collect the money And the other thing is, I'm sorry, really quickly, is
No,
that people
please.
think by supporting these murderers, they're supporting the little guy. But I will tell you, the little guy is the victim's family, is the prosecution. I remember when I got into court the first day at the 𝐋𝐞𝐭'𝐬 hearing, I think it was like the person and two people in front of me got in, and then I had to go to the overflow room. There wasn't enough room in court. So I'm in this overflow room, and I'm looking, this is Brooklyn courthouse, like not too shabby, but the screen that we're looking on, like the sound didn't work. It's like terrible. It's like technology from like 1995 they're using.
Yeah.
I will tell you, the prosecution is not the man with all this money and power.
No.
The Innocence Project has endless interns, endless money, and endless experts at their disposal. And they
PR.
join forces, and we're talking about the Jones case. They joined forces with the ACLU, anti-death penalty cases. I mean, the amount of money in this, and you see that with Julius Jones. He's got $18,000 on death row that he's sending to his friends and family.
Yeah. He's making
Where's
money.
that money coming from? T-shirt deals, sneakers deals.
Sneakers. He's making money. He was caught on a prison phone asking someone to help him write a book. He's so profiting off of this murder, just like O.J. Simpson did. You know what? Until the judge filed the injunction that he couldn't.
And then he moved to Florida, so he doesn't have to pay the Goldmans. Yeah, I am actually one of the few people who did read the If I Did It book. And because when I was working at Oprah magazine, it came in, it was a free copy. So I was like, oh, I guess I'll read it. It was pretty damning. And I will tell you that with the most disturbing thing in this Julius Jones case is one of these prison snitches. Now I'm forgetting his last name. Arbery? No, it's different, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, he's gotten all this money put into his account after he said that Chris Jordan and Julius Jones had nothing to do with it. Chris Jordan told him he did it alone. All this money is pouring into his prison commissary account.
Yeah.
I wish they had asked that at the clemency hearing. Who's putting that money in?
According to Paul Howell's family, Rachel Howell, the daughter, I totally believe her. They presented a list of I think it's 20 questions they wanted somebody on the board to ask Julius Jones, and they declined it. There was only one gentleman on the board that actually asked questions, and he raked Jones over the coals. I mean, he really did. Yeah,
Richard Smotherman. And for anybody who thinks that they're the last sane person on earth, I am starting the Society of Smothermans. For the people who think they're the last sane people who dare to ask questions. And the rest of the board just looked at, like, I compared them to hypnotized cobras. They just had this kind of blank look. And I thought, I know you're a supporter. I know the fix is in, but just to show a little respect to the House, can you ask one of those questions? Someone?
Exactly. It was like a bunch of Stepford wives sitting there. Just no emotion, no shaking of the head. And I really hope that Governor Stitt doesn't fall to the PR machine. I really hope. He's in a red state. I hope he knows he has the backing of most of his voters, his constituents, I think, on this. And that a lot of this support is coming in from outside of Oklahoma.
Where are you?
I'm in Tennessee. I'm in a red state myself. So
everybody in Oklahoma tells me Governor Stitt will never grant this clemency, and I'm not so sure. I don't know. I'm very nervous because I've seen what the power of money. He's Governor Stitt in his first year released more, commuted more sentences, 744 in his first year. One of the board's recommendation, the guy turned out to be a cannibal killer, killed 3 people, stabbed the other in the eye, ate the heart out of first he killed his neighbor, then he took her heart to his family members and wanted to serve it to them. They wouldn't eat it, so then he killed two of them. One was a child, I believe, and then he stabbed his other relative in the eyes. So she's the only one who lived. So that was a great decision by the same pardon and parole board.
Yeah,
And another one went on to
reoffended.
beat his wife. Yeah,
Yeah.
beat his wife in burglary. So I don't think they're too wise, this pardon and parole board.
Oh, not the board. It's a bunch of activists, and I don't
Yeah.
understand. They're anti-death penalty, and whatever your thought is on the death penalty, anyone. I mean, this guy has been sitting on. It's time for him to go. I hate to be that way, but it's just time for him to go.
I agree. And he's a gang member. He's doing gang business in prison.
Threatening witnesses.
And however you feel in Tennessee, or I feel in New York, Oklahomans want the death penalty. And if you believe in state rights, they should have the death penalty if they want it in their state. That's how I feel. Because I'm not particularly against it or for it passionately either way. My fear is that once they get rid of the death penalty in these red states, that they'll go after life without parole, just like they did with juveniles. And then after they get rid of life without parole, then they're gonna. There's an organization that wants people to do no more than 20 years, no matter what the crime. And our legal system is very careful in the way that we sentence people. This is why we have. I mean, that's the other thing about that clemency hearing. We should have heard about different factors that make Jones eligible for clemency, for mercy, but it wasn't. They wanted to retry the case in front of this activist pardon parole board. One, Adam Luck, who I call Adam Cuck, who's giving a TED talk comparing putting people in prison to slavery and retweeting Kim Kardashian's free Julius Jones tweets 2 years ago, and Kelly Doyle, who's also an activist. These people are not the right people to be sitting on the pardon parole board. And I hope that there is some kind of investigation just for the safety of the people of Oklahoma.
Absolutely, because they don't need him back on the streets. And it's just like the deck is stacked against those of us that advocate for the victim and the victim's family. Like, we don't get the reach of somebody, let's say, like a Kim Kardashian, or even there's some very large true crime YouTubers that have taken up this cause, just opposite of what we have, about actually campaigning for Jones, that have millions of subscribers, that have taken up this mantle, that get pushed all over the algorithm and stuff. But we get suppressed. Those of us, I almost feel
right.
that those of us that are actually speaking out and have actually read the trial transcripts and didn't just watch the Viola Davis documentary and have formed an opinion, that actually read the trial transcripts and have listened to the interviews with the lawyers that know what happened, that we get suppressed. Our message doesn't get heard loud and clear.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty much shadow banned on YouTube, meaning I don't get videos that recommend my videos, no matter how many watches I've gotten on certain ones. It's just unless you're subscribed to me, you won't hear about me. And I have been shadow banned. Now I'm out of shadow ban prison on Twitter. But it was kind of an interesting thing that happened to me. Someone, I don't know if I can say this, but someone, okay, I know how I'll put it. Someone said answered one of my tweets, "You're a racist C word." And normally I would just let it go, but I'm so angry at the way that people are being censored on Twitter. I was like, this clearly violates the Twitter rules. And I sent it to Twitter and they were like, no, they sent me a whole thing. Thanks for your submission. We looked at this. It's totally okay. This totally is in line with our rules and regulations.
That's why I'm not even on Twitter.
You're smart. I can't give it up. I'm like I don't know, glutton for punishment.
I have an account, but I'm rarely on there. But I feel you about the whole shadow ban. If I look at my stats, like it ebbs and flows. Like, I'll get where I'm 50-50 non-subscribers versus subscribers, but then it normally hovers around 70% subscribers to 30% non-subscribers. And that's just because I have a marketing firm that helps me promote my stuff on Reddit and things like that. They help bring in non-subscribed people. But for the most part, the algorithm just doesn't push my videos. And I think it's because I have put out what people would consider some conservative viewpoints on some of this stuff. But I'm not a conservative. I'm middle of the road. I'm an average everyday person, just like you, that has opinions. And I'm not just going to follow the masses that say this is the way it should be. I'm going to research.
I was looking at your video. You tend to be right. We both tend to be so right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to toot my own horn, but I mean, it just doesn't ever. I have gotten, by the way, speaking of recommendations on YouTube, I have gotten recommended the video on Brendan Dassey, the nephew of Stephen Avery, who helped to dispose of the body and didn't help Teresa Hall back. I have gotten a video recommendation, and I have put not interested no less than 10 to 15 times on that thing. And it will keep coming back recommending me that video. I was like, wow, what is going on here? No, I don't believe Brendan Dassey is innocent, and I do not want to watch this. I'm not interested. But it just keeps recommending it. So
I get recommended like the Innocence Project, Justice for Julius Jones stuff all the time, and the same thing. Not interested. I have read everything on their website. I've watched all these videos that are pro Julius Jones. I've watched them, and of course I feel sorry for somebody that's facing his own mortality. Of course I feel sorry for him, but I feel more sorry for the family of Paul Howell, and I want justice served, you know. And what people don't realize, even if they commute him to life with no parole, or life with the chance of parole, which is what the Pardon and Parole Board wants, he'll be out in 7 years. They'll get him out of there. If it's commuted, he will walk. He will get out.
And what the victim's family goes through at these hearings, these parole hearings, is it's torture for them, and it just has them relive the crime over and over again.
Yeah.
So
his sister,
I would like to end it.
Yeah. He needs to go. He's not a good person. He's not a benefit to society. He's not a contributing part to society. Chris Jordan, I mean, I was told that I was a racist because I was supporting this. I'm like, well, no, not really, because they're trying to pin it on another black man who has done his time and admitted he drove the car, admitted he was there, and has served his time. But they're trying to pin it on him. What about him? What about his justice, if you want to take it from that angle?
Well, and the crazy thing is, when Chris Jordan was arrested, he said, it wasn't me, it was Julius. I just drove the getaway car. And he admitted to it, and he got the deal because he was ready to own up to it. And he had he didn't have the extensive record that Julius Jones did.
No,
and they kept that out of the record in court, that statement. But I find that very damning. To me, when you get arrested, that first thing out of your mouth is, I drove the getaway car. You would think in that situation, you wouldn't have time to plan your whole and he even admitted there might be my fingerprints on the bullet and the gun. I handled it. And it made me think about Julius Jones, and was he plotting to put it on Jordan from the beginning? And was he handing him the gun to look at because Jordan liked guns? Was he starting to think about doing these kind of things to try to, I don't know. I just wonder if there was some of that going on, of thinking about, because he also told his girlfriend that he was leaving town to evade the police, to evade arrest. So there's so many things. I find all of these different, what the prosecutor did in the clemency hearing, she talked about pieces of a puzzle. There's so many non-interested witnesses in this, and interested witnesses, that all make a picture of Julius Jones being the one responsible for Paul Howell's murder. And I find that not only more interesting than DNA, but DNA can be corrupted. It can be misinterpreted. There's a lot of nuance to it sometimes, but this is much harder to disprove. And that's why they have to lie, because they don't have anywhere to go. I don't saying they have to lie. They choose to lie. But
exactly. And that's, You know, we talking about the prosecution not being the most well-funded of any case in point. I'm covering the Kyle Rittenhouse trial daily. I do daily summaries. Today, I mean Friday, the whole thing turned to DNA.
I watched some of that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't watch the DNA part. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Sorry.
No. Today, more DNA when they had more experts come on, and then they also interviewed one of the men, the surviving shooting victim, and basically what it came out to is that this DNA expert that the prosecution called, when the defense cross-examined them, admitted that just because somebody's DNA isn't on it doesn't mean they didn't touch it. And it was just this whole thing. And then, of course, they had the photo of the person they saying touched it with his hand right on it. So it was obvious that he touched it. But, and then today, one of their star witnesses admitted that the prosecution star witnesses now admitted that Rittenhouse did not fire on him until he pulled his own gun and pointed it at Rittenhouse.
That's what I was excited to talk to you about. I saw that testimony.
He admitted,
and it gave me chills.
The prosecutor went like this at the prosecution table
multiple times. Multiple times he looked like he was going to have a heart attack. It was so devastating for the prosecution. And I'm thinking, I see a lot of people are watching this. Are you getting good views on your videos on it?
I get my average. I don't really spike at the beginning. I get maybe 100, and then it'll grow over time. But yeah, I'm getting decent views.
But a lot of people are watching this. I'm glad that people watch. I know some people disagree with me. I think it's a great thing that they show these trials. And that people get to see our justice system in action. I hope it's educating people, but
me too.
It just seems like this is so politically divided that the right wants him off and thinks he's a hero, and the left thinks he's a white supremacist, and a villain. And no matter what the verdict, I'm scared for the jury because I don't know either way it goes. There's going to be some upset. I think the right seems to be able to take these things a little bit better than the left. And I say that as someone who grew up in a far left household. But
and I'm divided.
Why are you divided?
I think it clearly, as far as the shootings, it was self-defense. I think, but then this is my prediction. He's going to get found not guilty by virtue of self-defense on all three of the shootings, but he is going to go down for being out after curfew and reckless discharge of a firearm. I really think they're going to get him on that. That's my prediction.
It just looks like every time I see that, I always say I have a little bit of a Jewish mother in me, and when I look at his baby face, he looks like a baby. Doesn't he look like? I mean, I know he's young. I can just hear my relatives just screaming now at me, but I find it hard not to. He's a sympathetic, like I want to protect. Like he looks like a baby, and the idea of him going to prison or a hard prison and having to deal with that seems. But at the same time, I think, what are you doing? It's so crazy of you. I understand why he did it. I understand but like those are people you do not want to be out in a riot with a gun.
I'm divided. Like I said, I've said
I see where you're divided. I think we're the same kind of. Yeah.
If he were my son, he would not have been out there. He's 17. He's still under my under my control at 17. He would not have even been out there, but he was, and it happened. And I think as far as the shootings, it was self-defense. And but I think he is going to face some time for gun charge and being out after curfew. That seemed to be just a silly little charge they tacked on.
What are the do you know what the suggested sentences for something like those two charges would be?
It's less than 5 years. Less than 5 years. I mean, the out after curfew is like a $200 fine, but the other could be up to 5 years. Now, some of the other stuff he's facing is essentially life. It's like 60 years for some of them. But I think he's going to walk as far as those go.
You know what's funny? Did you follow the Brendan Bernard? He was on
I,
death row for burning people alive in the back of the car.
no, I did not, but I will check that
Yeah,
out.
and that was another one of Kim Kardashian's pet murderers. And they were saying, "Oh, he did this when he was 18. His brain wasn't developed." Where are all these people? These are basically the people, very dishonest campaign that trying to get rid of life without parole
Mhm.
for juveniles. And if a juvenile gets life without parole, it means their case is so heinous that they're showing such early signs of psychopathy and really disturbing cases you can listen to. I've done a couple episodes with the Ohio representative of the National Organization of Victims of Juvenile Murderers. And you never hear in this Kyle Rittenhouse, here he's 17, you don't hear that his brain isn't fully developed. Don't judge him by the worst mistake he made. You don't hear any of these arguments for Kyle Rittenhouse. Where are they? But had he gone out and murdered and dissected these people and God knows what else disturbing thing with the people that he killed, they would be out there in a second, like just murdering them for fun. These bleeding hearts would say his brain isn't developed. Don't judge him by the worst mistake he's ever made. All their usual talking points.
Well, the whole thing was there was plenty of testimony beforehand that the first Joseph Rosenbaum, the first man that he shot, was like chasing him, had been erratic all night, was screaming at BLM people, was screaming at, the libertarians that were out there guarding private property, calling the African Americans the N-word with the hard R. I mean, many times saying that if he caught him alone, he'd kill him. And this is the person that Rittenhouse shot. Why, after he was attacked? Why?
He's also, doesn't he have he has convictions for pedophilia, or is that a different guy? Am I wrong?
I believe that was him. I believe he is on a registry in a state. I'm not sure if it's Wisconsin, but I believe I did read that and did see. It was
like boys 5 through 7. It was disturbing. I mean, I know that shouldn't be in the trial.
No, but it shouldn't. But his mental state the night was, and he had just been released from psychiatric care. One of my subscribers, Zach, who's been a longtime subscriber and a channel member, he said that it looks like to me if they had just held Rosenbaum another 24 hours, this whole chain reaction would never have happened, because it just seems that he was the catalyst for everything. And it's absolutely true if you think about it.
Why is this just political pressure to charge Rittenhouse? Is that what's going on?
I don't want to go so far as to say that, but it has occurred to me that maybe the state knows this is they're not going to get the conviction, but they have to do it, so they won't be called all kinds of names.
Interesting.
It has flown around in my head. I'm not saying that's the reason, but I had a conversation with another YouTube friend of mine who was saying that, is this prosecutor's first trial? Because he's making a ton of mistakes. And of course, the defense is just Rittenhouse's defense team is just spot on. The way that guy cross-examines people. I mean, that's the kind of attorney you want defending you. He's just expert. And then over here you have Bush League. It's like,
that's right. It's so interesting. Do you know what his defense has cost so far, Kyle Rittenhouse?
I know he raised something like $2 million, maybe more. I know some of it was for his bail, which was set at $1 million. And then I don't know if he's being represented pro bono. I'm sure for this firm, it's probably a good thing. I know he was at first represented by Lynn Wood, who is this real famous attorney.
Yeah,
and then
the Ramsey's attorney, sure.
Right. And then then Rittenhouse fired him and got this new attorney who is just
I think
excellent.
That was a good move. Yeah.
Me too.
I think that was a good move. Yeah. From what I know about Lynn Wood and how he operates from the Ramsey case, just that case.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm sure that this defense people know that, once that bail money is returned, if it gets returned, which I'm sure it will, it should, that all that's going to be going to them. But but then I also think the civil suits that's going to come in at this at Rittenhouse, for example, the they've already said that 𝐲𝐢𝐯, who was the person that testified today and said that he was only shot after he threatened Rittenhouse with a gun. He's already supposedly filed like a $10 million civil case against Rittenhouse, supposedly. So we're going to see all
good
these.
luck collecting, because it looks like it didn't look good, at least in court today. He has all these inconsistent statements, and I just saw a little of it. I didn't see. I saw about an hour and a half of it today. And but he was like a defense witness. I mean, they really turned a prosecution witness into a defense witness. It was fascinating.
The only ones that have come off as good for the prosecution, I mean, you had one of them's great aunt. She was very sympathetic, but the defense didn't really press on her because she was an elderly woman. It was just testifying to her nephew's state of mind. Nothing really to tear into there. And then the two owners of the car lots that were saying they never told Rittenhouse and his friends to guard their stores. They showed text that shows that they never answered Rittenhouse. But then you have another prosecution witness from Monday or Tuesday that said that they were told verbally, that it was never in text. They were told verbally. So those are the only two that have come off as anywhere near competent for the prosecution.
Are these Antifa people, these people that were running after chasing Rittenhouse, or these BLM people, or
no,
are they a mix of both, or
no?
Who are these cats?
They were people out there for the sole purpose of criminal activity. In my opinion, Rosenbaum was out there up to no good. Him and his erratic behavior that was caught on video by several people, and eyewitnesses have testified. I think he was out there for no good. He had some compadres by the name of 𝐲𝐢𝐯𝐞, who fired the first shot on in the car lot, parking lot. That was definitely out there up to no good. They've been charged with he and his wife, Real Peaches, have been charged with various crimes in relation to that night. They were out there for no good. When you get into the ones that were shot later, the gentleman with the skateboard, I think maybe he thought he was doing a civic service by bringing the shooter down because he didn't know the details around it. But you also don't run at somebody that has a gun with a skateboard and try to grab the gun.
You know what they might charge Kyle Rittenhouse with, or might go to prison for, is smoking and crimes against fashion for wearing gloves. And do you remember that testimony?
Yeah. But no,
he was smoking a lot, and he was wearing gloves. I was like, this is the best they could do. This is the best they could do with this witness here.
Even Corey Washington, who was the influencer that took most of the video that night, he said he took note of Rittenhouse because he was chain smoking and wearing medical gloves. He said that just seemed very odd to him, and so he just made a mental note to watch this guy. And then he also said he made a mental note because Rosenbaum was calling people N-words and everything else. And then of course I think the second person that got shot, the one with the gun, was probably out there for criminal behavior too, because he's got a rap sheet a mile long. So I don't think any of these people that were doing these crimes were associated with BLM. I think they were just out there for the purpose of, it's a protest looting situation. What can I do? Advantage me. What can I do just to be destructive?
Yeah. I there was that one moment with the guy who got shot on stand. Do you remember what his last name was?
The one that got shot where?
Who got shot by Rittenhouse? Who said,
𝐲𝐢𝐯𝐞,
right.
𝐲𝐢𝐯𝐞. It's a real hard name to pronounce, but yeah.
But he talked about what he told the police when he was in the hospital. And he said, well, I was on drugs, and which was really interesting because my friend had just sent me a thing on mind control and how when you're on he said I was on barbiturates, and how barbiturates make you more talkative and more willing to tell the truth. And he said, well, you can't. I just was very confused, and what I told wasn't the truth then, right after the event happened. And I just wonder how the jury's going to take that, because I found that very hard to believe. I always find, at least when I'm researching these cases, the best testimony is always the closest to when it happened. These crimes
Absolutely.
happen not farther away. You get more truthful. Unless, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he thought he was going to be charged with something. I guess I can see his defense side, but I thought that was a terrible admission for him
too.
to say. Yeah.
Out of all of them, I think Anthony Hoover was the only one that wasn't out there just for the sake of doing damage. I think he legitimately wanted to be out there to support African American people. I have no problem with that. As far as I know, he was not causing any damage. And then when he saw Rittenhouse, he tried to apprehend him in a very foolish way and got shot as a result. And I think he was the only one of the ones that got shot that were not out there for pure criminal behavior.
Yeah, definitely. It's very. I'm glad I can't wait to listen to some of your episodes on it, because I just started watching a little bit of it. So
I listen to it every day. I do about while I work. I listen to it, and I try to condense the 6 or 7 hours that it is into less than 20-minute summaries for my audience. So
yeah, you're good at that. I admire your brevity. Something I something I haven't mastered yet. Yeah. So anything else you want to talk about? I don't know.
Yeah, tell us about any interesting episodes that are coming up that my viewers might want to check out.
Well, I'm finishing up on, I have 2 more, and I guess I spilled the beans about David McKenzie's episode.
He was Julius Jones' original defense attorney, correct?
Yeah. And I was telling you that was my first in-person interview. So it was just a very, everything about it will be memorable. He's such a smart guy. I just thought I liked him so much, and I was fascinated by the things that he had to say and the way he thought and his fairness. He was a prosecutor for a little while. He was a constitutional lawyer for a little while. I mean, I hope to have him back on because he's had such a rich, interesting life. But we mainly talked about Julius Jones. Sean from Actual Justice Warrior, I have that interview tomorrow. And
very cool.
I'm really just interested in hearing what other people are observing about these innocence fraud campaigns. And it looks like I have an episode coming up that I did with William Ramsey about Amanda Knox's interview, 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan.
Wow.
And Joe Rogan has become friends with Jason Flom, who he claims that his money started the Innocence Project, was some of the money that started the Innocence Project. And he has the Wrongful Conviction podcast. And I'm very familiar with Jason Flom. For one, he has a full-time researcher from the Innocence Project. If you look at his Instagram, he's flying on private planes. Just the money that the Innocence Project has is just outrageous. So he had gotten in touch with me about 2 years ago because he wanted me to just send him my research. And I didn't answer him back. But then Jason Flom's people got in touch with me and I think I was on some kind of PR list and wanted to come on and talk about his new podcast. And I wrote back, absolutely. Because I'm dying to have a conversation with someone from the other side. And I said, I'm very familiar with him. I'd love to have him on. The PR person wrote back, great. This is where the death came into me. She said, let me just circle in someone else higher up. And once they did that, I never heard back again. So I guess they checked me out and they weren't about to, but I would love to have a really a non-hostile, polite conversation. I'd like to understand where they're coming from, because I've asked so many people on from the other side, and it's always radio silence. They don't want to engage. They don't want to debate. They don't want to support their position. I go on to anybody's podcast that wants to challenge me on why I have the opinions I do. I'd love to. I
That's
love the
me.
opportunity. You too,
I would,
right?
I would love to. I'll debate anybody that, you know, is more that's on the Innocence Project side, and I'm going to do a deep dive into the Innocence Project. I may see if you might want to collab on that at some
Yeah,
point.
I'll tell you everything I know. I've been studying it for the only person yeah, I can show you a few yeah, I can point you to some really interesting directions, but as much as I know, it just every year it just gets darker and darker, and I find that the bottom is bottomless with the story. It is, and it's very hard from what I know from 𝐋𝐞𝐿 and Madoff and other things, other frauds we've had in this country. It's very hard to stop something when it's making people a lot of money.
Absolutely. And so what I always say to my viewers, don't believe me. Don't believe Roberta. Don't believe Sean over at Actual Justice Warrior.
Yes.
Read the actual documents and read the court transcript. Read the actual trial transcripts of these trials and come to your own conclusions. But
and that's the biggest difference between our side and their side. And that's something David McKenzie was saying, is they don't want people to read the record, including me. They wouldn't give him a copy of his own record. I got it, but luckily before the interview, Shelley Levasseur was nice enough to share the complete trial transcripts of that trial with me. But they don't want you to read the record. They want to control they want only what I'd call their facts, which aren't facts or lies. And they want to control the narrative completely. And they don't want a discussion. They don't want to be challenged. And that's very scary. And they want to circumvent the legal system. So they want to try these things by document. Yeah, trial by PR, trial by documentary, trial in front of the Pardon Parole Board, which seems to have nobody's. I was asking David McKenzie today, what are the consequences for lying to the Pardon Parole Board? He didn't know, which makes me think there aren't any. I don't think anyone's ever right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an uphill battle that we fight, being an actual being on the side of victims' rights and on the side of true conviction and true punishment when it's warranted. It's an uphill battle.
I have to ask you, because this is the question I ask all the time. I'm so curious. Why do you think that nowhere is this bigger than in America? What is it about American culture that is so in love with the idea of the wrongfully convicted person?
I don't know. I don't know if it's ties into, I hate to get political on my channel, but I always end up having to touch on it. I don't know if there's just some guilt, some pervading guilt that pervades society about that, or
so you're saying when it's like a black defendant, like, but they but even white defendants, a lot of white defendants,
brown
too.
Defendants,
right.
I don't know. I often wonder if we did do away with the death penalty, would the innocence, the whole wrongful conviction thing kind of lose steam? Is it just the death penalty that's driving it, or is it, but there have been instances where they want to get them out of prison when they're just in life for prison. But the whole thing is, you look at people like Charles Manson and things like, would you really want those kind of people released into society? And just because they're not well known, it doesn't mean that they're any less. We were talking about in Oklahoma, another one of the ones that the current governor did release, reoffended, within like 5 years of his or 2 years of his release, I think.
Wait, are you talking about Anderson?
Yeah.
Are we the one that cannibal? No, that was like a month.
A month. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It was even crazier. It was like this guy wasn't out a month, and he I think it was like a month, maybe, if I have it wrong, it's 6 weeks, but no longer than that. I believe. If I'm wrong, I'll correct it, but I'm pretty sure that I'm right on that. And I was shocked when I found that out, and I sent it to everybody I knew.
I am all for prison reform. I am all for police reform. I do think there's some biases there. I'm all for, I would like to see them do away with qualified immunity and, you know, make law enforcement hold insurance just like any other professional organization. So maybe we cut down some of the unneeded violence. I've never said that we don't need police reform or overall prison reform, but this is not the way to do it. And I don't think that there's no reason except for just some guilt, some pervading guilt that's out there in the American psyche, or the fact that we are so heavily ingrained in celebrity culture in this country, which could be it. Where, you know, I doubt Kim Kardashian has never read the transcript of this trial, or any of the other people that she's her causes for killers. She's never read any of the trial transcript. She doesn't care. She just knows she gets clicks for it.
Well, I think it's really a value of the left, the idea that our justice system is so terrible and that we're incarcerating so many wrongful people, and that our justice system is racist somehow and is systematically racist.
But if you look at the stats, the statistics not there.
Right,
the data is not there to support that at all.
Of course not. And it couldn't even be, I just don't know. And you'll never see any of these. You'll never see Jason Flom. You'll never see Kim Kardashian. You'll never see any of these Innocence Project people in court. And I'm talking about Bob Ruff, any of the people that come out and support all these killers. They're never in court, but they want to talk about, like, they're familiar with our justice system. I always tell my listeners, go check it out. It's free. We have open courts. Just walk in and check it out. But the idea that somehow racism magically is affecting these trials, and they love to say all white jury, and then if you ask your white friend, well, if you were on a jury and everybody else, would you be racist because you're white? And say, oh no, I'm not racist, but these other people are. I think also it's like a South-North thing too. I think in some ways we're still fighting the Civil War. I think there's an idea of people in the North that the South is all racist and filled with racism and so racist. I don't know if I don't live there. I don't know if it is. I doubt. I doubt.
I'm an open gay woman living in Tennessee. I have never had any problems. I've never had any problems, and I live in the sticks. So if they wanted to come and do, do something to me, they could.
Right. That defies certainly the stereotype of the. It's sad. It's sad. It's sad. It's just these broad strokes that don't. They work in PR, but they don't work in court. And then you can see this in the Jones case, why a jury and 13 appellate courts turned down by the Supreme Court 4 times. It's an impossible case. It wasn't, it's an impossible case to win. David McKenzie gave a vigorous, I was not ready for this, passionate defense of Jones, passionate defense of him. He tried every angle he could to get him off. And it sounds like when you say, oh, he didn't put on a defense, compared to Keith Raniere's defense, where you had I think they spent $13 million on him and his other defendants' defense. So multi-million-dollar defense was not nearly as passionate as what Julius Jones got or is involved. So never know.
Exactly.
Anyway, yeah. So I will keep talking and talking.
I'm
talking.
having a great time, but I really appreciate you coming on. And everyone, please go check out both her YouTube, both Roberta Glass True Crime Report here on YouTube and her actual podcast. I will put links to all of that up here and below. Please be sure to let her know that I sent the Keto and Crime sent you over, and give her support, because we need more people to support the ones that are out there advocating for fairness and the victims, and not just bowing to PR. We need to support these people, and I really appreciate everything you do, Roberta. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And with that being said, everyone, we'll sign off. I will see you next time. Keto and Crime. Ow.
Okay.